Hello, it's Dr. Christine Arsenault, PharmD, Functional Medicine Certified Health Coach. Today, I wanted to talk about something that some people might be offended by, and that is reasons that you want to be sick. I know that concept offended me when I first heard it. Like, why would I choose to be sick? Why would I want to be sick? And especially if you've already been told that it's all in your head by healthcare providers, you've been belittled and not taken seriously, it might feel rude to tell you that there are reasons that you want to be sick. But the thing is, a lot of these reasons are unconscious. They're at a subconscious level. And if we can become aware of those and learn what the reasons are that we are staying sick, then we're able to do something about it and to let go of those reasons. And it's not that it's all in your head, but really disease is in our head, in all of our heads and our souls and our bodies. It's everywhere. And until you recognize that and address all of those areas, you really can't move forward. And I know this very well because I was trained as a pharmacist. So I was very much focused on the physical. And what can I do on a physical level to get better, to make my body feel better? I'm taught about pharmaceuticals and changing the chemistry in your body to change symptoms. But healing is about so much more than that. And so you really have to look at your life in a comprehensive way if you want to get better. You really have to address everything. And so there are these reasons that we choose to stay sick, even unconsciously on that subconscious level. And that keeps us in these energetic patterns of being stuck where we are, being stuck, being sick because it's more comfortable, even though it's extremely uncomfortable because you're in pain and you have all these symptoms. Sometimes it's more comfortable to be in that uncomfortable pain than to be somewhere new, than to be somewhere scary in the unknown and not knowing what it's going to be like when you reach that. So, what are the reasons that we stay sick? How do we benefit when we are sick? And if it's too much of a reach for you to think of it in terms of your chronic illness, you could think of it just in terms of having the flu. If you're in bed all day, what are the benefits that you see when you're sick versus having a long-term chronic issue? And at the end, I'm going to tell you my reason why I was staying sick and how I became aware of that. So one of the reasons that we choose to stay sick, even on that unconscious or subconscious level, is because of the attention that we get and to be taken care of by somebody else. Sometimes we just want to be taken care of, but we aren't comfortable asking for that. So when we are sick, we get attention that we might not otherwise get from other people, maybe from a loved one or a partner or other people in our life. So that's one of the patterns that can keep us energetically in that state of being stuck in a sickness. Another one is to be validated and heard and understood. Sometimes we just don't feel heard. We just don't feel understood when we have a chronic condition that other people around us just don't understand. Our peers don't get it. We look healthy, but we feel like crap. We don't have the energy to even get up and walk across the room to the fridge. But we look normally on the outside and people just don't get it. And especially healthcare practitioners, they might look at your labs and tell you things are normal and you're fine. And that doesn't validate what we're going through. And so part of the reason that we stay sick is to prove to these people that there is something wrong with us, that we're not crazy. We are in pain. We are suffering. And it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to energetically get tied up in that pattern. But that's another reason that we stay sick. Another big one is that it stops you from doing something that you don't want to do. And maybe that's getting out of a toxic work environment. Maybe that's going to visit friends or family that you just don't get along with, that you really don't want to see. So when we're not able to put those boundaries up ourselves, being sick is a way to stop us from doing those things that we just would rather not be doing. And maybe it's just resting. Maybe being sick is us giving ourselves permission to rest, because otherwise we wouldn't give ourselves that permission. Hey, Andrea, thanks for tuning in. So our symptoms of being sick give us that opportunity to rest. And that is, a benefit of being sick, even if it's an unconscious thing, is that sometimes we get so stuck on productivity and being productive and pleasing others in our lives that we don't give ourselves our own permission to rest. So that is one reason that we may benefit from continuing to stay sick. Another big reason is to avoid pain. So sometimes it's just easier to be sick, even though you're in that kind of pain, because it would be even more painful to change your life and to have to face things that you've been avoiding because they're just too painful to address. And then lastly, income is another reason that people may want to be sick. Is if you're getting disability, if you're getting money coming in, you're getting paid to be sick, well, that's an incentive to be sick and to stay in those patterns. And even if it's not on a conscious level, even though we say that we want to get well, we feel like we want to get well, subconsciously, that's a reason to stay where we're at, to continue receiving that income. And the thing about change, the thing about energy is when you become aware of these beliefs, you can shift your energy instantaneously. You can see changes right away, even if you've been sick for a long time, even if you have multiple co-infections. So energy is really, really powerful. And so lastly, I wanted to share with you my reason for staying sick and where I was in my journey up until that point. So I had done a lot of work on the physical. I had, taken supplements and IV vitamin C infusions and herbal products and done these things on a physical level. I'd also done a lot of work on my mindset. I had really dug into, realizing how powerful my words were, separating myself from the identity of somebody who has chronic Lyme disease. I stopped saying my Lyme disease. I was very aware of talking about my symptoms and complaining and having that be my identity. So I started to really pull back and put some space there. And I really addressed my soul as well and healing my inner child, those inner wounds that I had from childhood, and just really feeling my emotions. And so I got to this place of mind, body, soul, and I was working on all of them. But I had this huge instantaneous shift when I became aware of a subconscious belief that was keeping me in these patterns of being sick. It was keeping me stuck. It seemed like no matter what I did, I just couldn't fully cure myself from Lyme disease, even though I felt like I was doing everything right. And I had more knowledge than the average person because I was a pharmacist, I was a health coach. I knew what to do, yet I still was stuck and not quite better. And I became aware of this subconscious belief. It was during a spiritual ceremony that I was doing. I was doing some intense work, and this belief rose to the surface that, quite frankly, embarrassed me. It was something I didn't want to admit, but it was that I was yearning for the love of my mother. And me and my mom have always had a not so great relationship. And so for me to realize that, it was like I was a bit in shock, like I didn't want to actually accept that. But I realized it was my inner child just yearning for my mommy's love, and that I had always been a sickly kid. I had all these things that had been wrong with me, which it made sense once I realized I had Lyme disease and all the symptoms were connected. And really the only time in my childhood that I felt loved by my mother was when I was sick. That's when she took care of me. That's when she showed me that she loved me, that she showed me any affection. And so even though I lived in a completely different country than my mom, even though my mom didn't believe that I had Lyme disease and thought doctors were just making things up so that I would spend money with them and didn't take anything I was going through seriously, even though all of that, there was still this yearning in that little inner child, that little girl inside of me that wanted my mom's love so much that it was energetically keeping me in those patterns of staying sick. And once I had that realization, I completely let go my identity as somebody that has Lyme disease. And it was like that. The next day I woke up and I didn't have Lyme disease. I stopped taking all of my supplements. I started eating gluten, which I don't recommend anybody do that, by the way. It's not safe for you to stop things completely depending on what you're on. But for me, it was like I had witnessed the death of the old version of myself. In fact, I had literally been vomiting into the toilet as this happened, and I felt as if I was vomiting up the old identity, the old version of myself. And I left it. I left it all there in the toilet. I flushed it down. I became a new person in that moment. And the next day, I lived my life as somebody who didn't have Lyme disease. And I didn't go to a doctor again for about 2 years, but when I did, all of my labs were optimal and there was no signs of any residual effects from having Lyme disease, no signs of any active infections. I was cured. And to me, I don't even use the word remission. To me, that's like asking for it to come back. I think your words are powerful, and that word's not even in my vocabulary for my own health. I liken it to a butterfly who, starts off as a caterpillar and transforms into something new. That butterfly can never go back to being a caterpillar. It had this transformation. It became a new identity. And I felt like I had, new cells, like I was a completely new person. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't become aware of these beliefs. So your subconscious beliefs are really, really powerful. And that's what I help people to do, is become aware of those subconscious beliefs, because if you can do that, you can get to a state of health so much quicker, and change can just be instantaneous because we are all energy. So I will leave you with that today, and I hope you have a wonderful day.